I think it's a 3 count for me after the countdown.
Do you actually go back later and check and see?
Fucking A, I do.
Make sure we're on top of all the important stuff.
Sometimes the important things are right here next to us on a windowsill.
What's up, May? You got to get her on the mic, man.
You know, I should feed her in the supporting listeners group. And I could just have a bunch of people, a bunch of these detached sociopaths just call her a demon and stuff like that. But to be fair, when I'm about to feed her, she kind of looks like a demon. She just sounds like a siren. And it's just this weird, like, I don't know, Mario Brothers, like, ghoul face kind of staring up at you. It's doesn't inspire Christian thoughts, I wouldn't say.
And you mean like a not like a siren, right. Like
yeah.
An emergency siren. You mean like the Greek
Correct.
mythology siren?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, she's pretty doggone cute, man. I gotta say,
she's pretty cute.
I'm a sucker for little black cats.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one ourselves, and Amy isn't super big on her, but she's daddy's girl, you know.
Oh yeah. God, I love that.
You like having a little daddy's girl?
Yeah, my mother has to just be so disappointed that this all got directed towards cats. It's like he doesn't seem to feel anything. Like, oh, he's got a cat, and then yeah. Okay.
That's where the paternal instinct finally reared its ugly head, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll give you guys a few minutes to pile on in here today. And
happy Friday.
Yeah, I got a little announcement here at the start of the show. I'll kind of fill you guys in on some goings on. I won't give you all the details, but I'll give you just enough to tease you.
Ooh,
and then
love that.
Then we'll get into. We're going to do a little. This isn't going to be a full blown live reading, but we're going to read a little bit of Yarvin, and we're going to defend him. I know he's poor dear Kurt is under attack, and we must rally to his rescue.
That's right.
Cooper, hey Matt, why didn't you tell me that Fingerprints of the Gods and Imperium are fucking tomes? Got him. What's up, Caleb? Caleb says he's been reading a lot of Yarvin recently, doing Patriarch on the book club next week. Nice. That's a good one. It's good to see more people being exposed to Patriarch. That one, Patriarch.
To the one that nobody likes.
To Patchwork, yeah. That's the one that for the right person, it's a bit of a paradigm buster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it has its purpose, it has its place.
Mark says new co-host. Yeah, I barely recognize this guy. Apparently, Kenny G is now co-hosting.
God, that's why I cut my hair every single time.
Cooper, which one is 8 pounds? Is it Fingerprints or the one that shall not be named?
Oh yeah. Also, did you get, dude? If you bought a physical copy of the one that shall not be named, you are on all the lists. Actually, yeah. You're not even on a list. Someone's on their way right now. Yeah. You can't have a physical copy of that book.
Someone is about to knock on your door.
Right.
Carlos, what are you saying? We don't speak your tongue here.
Oh yeah, I know he's talking. That's fucking funny. That's some goofy fucking group. I guess they're Mexican, right? I don't fucking know, but yeah, they all look like this. My hair's just wet, by the way. Just for all the people who don't know how fucking curly hair works.
Yeah,
it's just damp.
Oh man, we got the chat popping already.
Yeah.
All right, if you guys can do the old YouTube special, the like, share, and subscribe, that would be great. We're hoping to get some good rees out of this one. I'll be disappointed if nobody shows up reeing, whether in the comments or the chat or in my Twitter mentions later on. I did one of those where I launched one off. Yeah, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. I can't separate the days from each other anymore.
Yeah,
I
it's getting bad.
Sit one of those tweets off and just it was like send, close, stick the phone in my pocket, let it go. Look back later on, saw people squealing, said, yeah, none of my problem.
Yeah.
It was one that was referencing the stabbies, and someone tried to do one of these tyranny of the moderate position where they said that that we need to be understanding of the people who have no choice or who decide to. It's their own personal choice. That that there is. I don't remember what the exact phrasing was, but it was like it's not some sort of a unforgivable submission to the regime. And I said, at this point, it's an unforgivable submission to the regime. I know that you don't necessarily agree with that, but
no, but
I
still fun to just Twitter's not for saying real things.
Right, exactly.
And just
Twitter's for the reactions.
I have to say, anyone who's ever confused by like everyone's just like, man, this Pete Quinones guy, I don't know really how to take it. Just he's always on Twitter. Basically, that's I think the easiest way for me to just sort of tell you how to take anything digital with Pete. He's always in Twitter mode.
Yeah, and it's like the way this works is so we don't do dialectics here. There is no either or. There's both and. There's both and either or, because there isn't. We don't do the either or between either or and both and. You can sit and think about that one for a minute if you want, but we're moving on. So the
unions of intersections and intersections of unions.
Right. So whenever we're posting on Twitter, we are shit posting, and it's entirely shit posting until we're serious.
Yes.
And when we're serious, we're still shit posting. When we're shit posting, we're still serious. And if you can't tell the difference, and if you can't make up your mind, then that's not our problem. Yeah, that's right, Cooper. I am blatantly stealing your catchphrase. If you don't like it, then start your own podcast. And
dude, let me tell you right now, Cooper would be the person that will get me to listen to a podcast again. I don't remember the last podcast that I've listened to, and it's nothing. It's just that like I just kind of wanted a cleanse, of like what I was sort of like taking in, and just I don't know, my attentions were sort of elsewhere. I did listen to a podcast recently. I don't remember what it was. So, it might have been one of Pete's. Maybe I'll tune in to hear Uncle Ted talk. But if Cooper had a fucking podcast, like I think he would need someone to like play off of, or someone to like sort of structure it a little bit.
Supposedly something like that is coming down the pike at some point. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I've heard via the grapevine that something like that might be happening in the near future.
That would be a podcast that I would actually go into a podcast app. I would search whatever the dumb name of your stupid show that I hate, by the way, Cooper, and I would press the subscribe button.
No question.
Whatever it's worth. Yeah, and I do have some ideas for a hypothetical podcast involving Cooper. That if something is gonna like this is coming down the pipe, you gotta get with me, because I think I could really produce this thing well.
He says it's going to be called the Real Monarchy Pilled Show.
See, basically, fuck it. I'm just going to bury the lead on it. Cooper needs to be handled like Hannibal Lecter. You know what I mean? So it's like he's not even the host of his own show. Someone else has to host it, and then they wheel him out. And then they have him deal with whatever victim is going to be on the show. Like, that's how the show needs to be structured.
And it needs to start before he begins talking at all. He needs to play some jazz. He just needs to play a little improv, a little bit of jazz, but it has to be completely awkward. Like no intro or anything like that. They wheel him out, and he just kind of looks really awkwardly at the camera. Then he plays a little bit of jazz.
Yeah.
And then he leans into the camera. Then he leans into the mic, and he starts talking.
Fucking hinged. That's what it needs to be.
Oh, we love you, Cooper. If you guys, there's obviously a lot of inside jokes going on here. This is all from the supporting listeners group. We've been having a good time in there lately.
By the way, I gotta say, I don't give a fuck about the show anymore. I only care about fucking talking on whatever night it is that we talk with the fucking supporting listeners. Fuck this show. This show's dumb.
Stupid real King Pill show.
Kurt can go fucking jump in a lake for all I care, even if I completely agree with him. I fucking love the supporting listeners group. It's so much fun.
I finally created, everyone was asking for this channel, and so I decided I'm late on everything, so I'd wait several days before I actually created it. But I created a channel for everybody to take their theological arguments, because we've had a couple of evenings now.
Argue with Cooper channel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. We've had a couple of evenings that have descended into just total and complete chaos, and it was funny the other night when the first night where it really happened. We had some Catholic. We had like the Catholic side, and then we had the Orthodox side, and then we had I don't know if I want to say it. We had a couple other people who were fighting as well, and there was kind of all these different fights going on, and then our dear sweet Rob jumped in. He just piled in to the conversation. And basically just everybody turned on him and just started smacking.
Which, by the way, is exactly what he probably wants.
Yeah.
It's so fun. If you enjoy, I don't know, it's just like just contentious environments that are also really, really fun. I don't know. It reminds me of how my friends and I used to interact, actually. And like I don't super see that very often, where people are just, I don't know, it's just like this wheel of death where everyone's just kind of just like trashing each other.
Yeah. At any point, anybody could be the victim.
Yeah, but it's all like I don't know. There's nothing really seemingly malicious about it. I don't know. It's fantastic.
We're lovingly trashing one another.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with that, since I don't know, I guess that was sort of an ad read that wasn't an ad read. If you want to join the supporting listeners group, you can go over to subscribestar.com/kingpilled. All the information's there. We have book clubs and we have various levels and all the bullshit's there, but it's really fun. I don't know. You don't need to get into all the deets. It's a rip roaring good time, if I may.
Indeed.
Fuck this show.
You're also welcome to send super chats here. We'll if you post any super chats in the YouTube comments, then we'll highlight them. We'll probably make fun of you. We may or may not take your question seriously, but we will appreciate you giving us money. So Mark says that one midnight where everyone was fighting, no one was safe. and I won by default because I outlasted everyone because I'm in the real time zone.
Yeah, the insomniacs and the people further west really have an advantage for this. Yeah, because basically debate winners become announced the day after.
Right.
It's
win by attrition.
Yes. It's like, dude, I'm in fucking England. It's like, you left. I don't know. Forfeit.
Speaking of that reminds me, I shouted this out on the last show, but I'll say it again because it was such a good conversation. I did an interview, I don't remember what day. It was at some point within the last couple of weeks. I had a conversation with a guy named Mr. Patriarch, he's an Alaskan guy who lives in South Africa, and we had a very interesting conversation about all manner of politics, religion. He's Orthodox, and so we're coming from a pretty similar perspective. So go check that out. His channel on YouTube is Mr. Patriarch. I appreciated him having me on. Jeremiah, Matt will literally say he's going to bed and then argue in Discord or Twitter until 3 a.m. I can feel Amy rolling her eyes at me from here.
It's just like at 8 o'clock, Matt's just like, my wife's gonna fucking kill me. I gotta leave right now. And then you just go look tomorrow, and it's just like, wait, 4:25 a.m.
So the last two, we're dragging this whole intro thing out, but it's fun. The last two times that we've done one of these, we did our Warlords Roundtable, then we did our monthly book club meetup. And both of them, we went shooting on past the 3-hour mark. And I'm like, all right, I need to go attend to my wife and my son, and I need to get ready for bed, because if I don't go to bed early enough, then I won't wake up early enough, and the next day will be shitty. And so like, I'm like, okay, we need to. I'm ready to wrap things up here. Got to get going. And y'all motherfuckers are just going, just chatting away. And so finally, both times, I just had to just say deuces. I've had to peace out, and everybody else has to attend to making sure the thing's recorded, and they just keep on going for keep on going for another hour or so. So yes, good times had by all. Cooper says he's going to go attend to his wife, winky face. So good for you, Coop.
Yeah, see you in 3 minutes, buddy.
That one got me good. He's a. I was trying to think of a way to shoehorn a reference to a McDonald's manager in there, but nothing came to mind immediately. So for those of you who know, you'll know. Okay, so TC asks, what is Clearpilled again? Accepting the regime's rule and withdrawing from any engagement with it or something? Yeah, that's roughly that. It's a little more than that, but roughly that. We'll get into it a little bit here as we go. First of all, so speaking of time zones, it is looking like we've been having a little bit of internal turmoil here, getting some things figured out here over the last few weeks. And it's looking like we haven't made an absolute determination yet. We're leaving the door open for something radical to show up, to change in the next couple of days. But as of right now, we are planning to move to Texas in the month of January. So we'll give you guys more details on everything at a later point, but the time has come for us to make our way out of, as good old Populibs has referred to me, Lot Erickson and his family must make our way out of Sodom and Gomorrah and relocate ourselves to the great state of Texas. And there's a number of different things that it seems have been pretty clearly taking us to that point, and there's a number of things that are pretty clearly pushing us away from California. We've spent the last several weeks here really really agonizing over this decision, because I know for a lot of people it probably seems like it should be really easy, but it hasn't been quite that straightforward for us. We have a number of things that are really really attracting, that really make us want to stay here in California. It's really weird. I just looked up at the screen just in time to see it was at 17 minutes and 17 seconds with 17 people watching. So shout out 17. The old heads around here will know what that's a reference to. So one of the biggest things has been that obviously we've been doing this little journey into orthodoxy, and we started, Amy and Eastwood and I started attending an Orthodox church here in Southern California, specifically St. Andrew's with Father Josiah Trenum. I think we've gone 5 or 6 times now, and we love the church. We really love the church a lot. It's a type of church that we would want to, grow up with, spiritually speaking. It's a great community. There's one thing for people who don't really know orthodoxy, I'm not someone who knows orthodoxy that well. I'm still just a complete neophyte. But one thing that I've become aware of is that some Orthodox churches are more amenable to visitors and new converts than others. Many Orthodox churches, especially in the United States, are just geared toward immigrants. Maybe they don't even do the services in English. They're primarily a very culturally insular group. So there's some that are that way, and then there's some that are very amenable to visitors. And the St. Andrews is one that's almost entirely former catechumens. There's very few cradle Orthodox there. Father Trenum himself has a really interesting background. He was raised, I think, Presbyterian, and then he spent a year as an Episcopalian before finally being ordained as an Orthodox priest. So he comes from, he studied under R.C. Sproul and a few other Reformed titans, and so he has a pretty interesting background that I feel very naturally drawn to, because I come from a somewhat Reformed background within the last decade or so. So anyways, it's a community that we've really been drawn to and we've wanted to remain a part of, but a variety of other things are compelling us to make the move to Texas finally. So we've been praying about it a lot, and it's become pretty abundantly clear. So barring any other, large sign or something that we're going to remain in California, we'll be spending the couple of weeks post Christmas very hurriedly cleaning the house, packing, finding someone to take over our lease, and piecing out. So we would desire we would covet your prayers. Any of you who are inclined into that, if you could pray for us and pray that everything goes smoothly. It's going to be a little bit of a flying by the seat of our pants kind of an experience. It's going to be we don't have any idea yet where exactly we're going to be moving. We're thinking somewhere in the San Antonio area. So shout out Carlos and Vanessa. We're looking forward to seeing you guys, and we'll also be kind of near our good buddy Buck Johnson. And so yeah, we don't exactly know where we're going or exactly how it's all going to work out or what dates or anything like that. A lot of this is just I guess we are trusting in the Lord to provide for us. So just so you guys know, things may be a little shaky here with the doing shows and stuff over the next month or so. We don't know for sure if we're going to be immediately renting a place, if we're going to do a hotel or an Airbnb for a month. I don't know exactly what days we're going to be driving. So I don't know exactly I'll have to tear down the studio here pretty shortly. So I don't know exactly how everything's going to be all set up. So just bear with us as we kind of work through this, and then we should be settled into a pretty good routine once we get there.
I'll be doing weekly cat shows.
Yeah, you can show up and see Uncle Stevie Boy and Little May.
That's right.
All right. So let's get into this. So, well, first of all, we should probably thank our sponsors. We've shouted them out a couple times here already, but our good friends Carlos and Vanessa Abelar and their Texas-based family business, Paloma Verde CBD. PalomaVerdeCBD.com is your source for all the best CBD products you could imagine. It's not just a good product, it's a good product from a good company with good people. And by using their product, you're supporting a young family that is a beautiful family. They've got a couple little girls now that I just saw a video on Facebook of Carlos installing a swing for their little girl Synovia. It was pretty cute, seeing her big old smile on her face, and we're looking forward to Eastwood getting to spend some more time with some Latinas. But so we're very happy to support Carlos and Vanessa and their products. We consume their products ourselves. I need to, seems like I always need to. I need to get restocked here, but I might just wait until I get down there because I don't know how much longer I'll have a mailing address here. But it's good stuff. They've got their gummies, of course. Steven has his preferred. Do you have yours with you right now?
I don't have them with me currently. I keep them. I keep them in my gentleman's washroom.
Gentleman's washroom. Mm-hmm. You have to say that with the Jordan Peterson accent if you're going to say washroom.
I don't know if I could do that. That's be too much. Yeah, but after I wash my gentleman, then I'm able to, I'm able to remember that I might be taking one before bed, and it's usually a good thing when I do. And again, green apple convert. Thanks to Carlos. I think Carlos heard me rave about the strawberry lemonade one time too many, and said, I'm not a one-trick pony, sir. Stuck on this green apple, and I obliged. So thank you, Daddy Carlos.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. So I had my favorite is the strawberry lemonade. So maybe I'll harp on that a little bit more, and then I'll wind up with some green apple. I'll order some strawberry lemonade, and I'll get some green apple. But yeah, so if you guys would like to get yourself some good CBD products and support our show and support a good family business, then you can head over to PalomaVerdeCBD.com, PalomaVerdecBD.com. Use promo code KING, and that will get you. The cat is digging under the door.
Get her in there.
Use promo code KING, and that will get you 25% off any order over $75. Okay. Tyler, we don't do dialectics here. So it's not either strawberry lemonade or green apple. It is both strawberry lemonade and green apple. Oh, there's it. Cooper's back.
Oh man, I'm
It's
sorry.
like a bat signal.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Cooper's wife. I'm sure he'll give you a back rub later, foot rub or something.
Okay, so there's been a. I should have pulled this up before we got started. So I'm going to kind of try to filibuster here. We'll see if I can find it, because I think someone posted this meme the other day in our meme thread on our supporting listeners group. There's been, here we go. So our good friend Kurt is our good friend Kurt has had a couple of pieces that he's posted on his gray with an A gray mirror substack.com, a couple pieces recently that really got people wound up. And one of them definitely got people more wound up than the other one, and that's not the one that we're going to address today. I don't actually really have a super strong opinion on that one. That one being the COVID one. I don't have a super strong opinion, though I will say that I think that a lot of the people who are having takes on it are either ignoring or forgetting the fact that when he's making prescriptions, he's not actually prescribing what he's expecting actually should be done. Like he's operating within this hypothetical world that he's just kind of ruminating on within kind of the hypothetical world. And so I think there's a degree to which there's kind of like a Zoomer nihilism here to him, which is a little ironic, which is kind of like a layers of irony there, where it's kind of like take me seriously, but don't take me literally. But I will say that I most likely very much disagree with him on the subject of the stabbies and such. But that's a little bit neither here nor there for me, because I've never seen him as the ultimate guru. I've never seen I like from him what I get from him, and he and I clearly don't share a fundamental epistemology. Even we have very significantly divergent views on religion, which is kind of funny because he very much influenced my my religious perspective on it. But
there's something refreshing about his and this is just if anyone has listened to it, he talked to like an Ethiopian Orthodox priest or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really just fascinating to listen to. And it's just like there's atheists you can listen to speak, and then ones that make you want to light yourself on fire. Like, I don't know. I find that guy odd, pretty spiritual, like for lack of a better word.
His entire power analysis is all distinctly mystical. Like he talks about things in, it's like he's using the language of I mean, he's a guy from who basically was born on the hill. Like he's from that whole milieu, so he speaks their language. But clearly, his entire power analysis is all. I mean, he's like one little iota away from actually using the word egregore. So I think it's he's definitely no goofy normie when it comes to a lot of these types of things. But so I think that there's I don't know, for me, having read a lot of him, I can tell when he kind of goes into character, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
Where
he knows what he's doing.
Right. And it sounds like there's a lot of people who read him who don't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Who they just kind of read him all in the same voice. But he definitely has different voices, and he uses them for different purposes. And like I said, there's kind of like a Zoomer irony to his voice online. But so the meme, the big meme recently that that people were kind of passing around, and this is what a lot of the criticism that I saw of him. So I want to make sure that we're very clear here, that we're not addressing the criticisms focused on China or the stabbies or the stuff related to the stabbies. We're not focused on that today. We're focused on the other one that he did recently, that he was already or I guess it actually came after that, that people were getting on his case for this, and it kind of revived stuff that people have been saying in the past, that basically they're kind of accusing him of being someone who has been inserted into the system for the sake of pacifying those who would otherwise be engaged in really valuable activism or something like that. That, in other words, that he's like a glowy that's here to try to induce the right into not returning and rising up, and all the stuff that that a lot of the online LARPing right.
Yeah, because they were really crushing it, and so they needed to be stopped. So they played the longest game ever with this guy.
Yeah.
Right. You got whatever their opinions are. I think Charlemagne, shout out, buddy. I know you're watching. You fucking liar. And maybe Academic Agent, or maybe Aaron McIntyre, maybe the three of them. There was some conversation when it was Aaron McIntyre, I want to say, and Charlemagne were talking about sort of where they parted ways with Yarvin, and this topic came up, and I believe was a consensus opinion that no way is Curtis Yarvin like a fucking psyop, like just
right.
It doesn't make any sense at all that that would be the case.
Yeah. It takes it. That's very much a midwit kind of like.
It just had me thinking of any of the people who said that. Just like, there's got to be, man. Just pick a random group of 50 people that they like interact with on Twitter. and it's like, dude, at least one or two of them. You know what I mean? But those people probably wouldn't register on their radar. But yeah, that was that gave me a good chuckle just now. Yeah, Curtis Yarvin before anybody. Okay, all right, Scooter.
Shout out Jeremiah. He says, I don't know whether you pronounce this as a word or if it's an acronym. POAAS is the pod he was on with the Ethiopian dude. It was interesting that I didn't even remember that he was Ethiopian Orthodox until I went back on it, like years after I'd watched that interview, and I was like, oh hey, I've started getting into Orthodoxy, and this guy was Orthodox, and so I'd been exposed to it in a way that I wasn't aware of at the time. But yeah, so yeah, the idea that I mean, if we're gonna start saying that Yarvin is a Fed, then you're kind of getting into the territory where if everyone's a Fed, then nobody's a Fed. And this is where, how far do I want to go with this? We referenced 17 earlier, and it's become basically universally accepted that the 17 is a Fed operation. And that, like the thing with Yarvin, that to me is even a bigger conspiracy theory than, like, you're having to really stretch yourself to try to create a scenario where people are playing multi-dimensional chess. And yeah, we're not getting into that here, but just for the whole idea, the fact, the notion that Yarvin is a Fed, just that would take some real Machiavellianism from within the regime to deal themselves such a potentially fatal blow for the sake of ultimately, like, trying to wrangle off one little corner of the dissident right, and then get them contained behind this guy or something. Like, you're starting to get into like some serious machinations. And I know that there's some serious machinations. I know that that kind of thing happens, but not to the, it doesn't have the level of planning at the microscopic level like this. It's macroscopic planning, and then the creation of networks of incentives. So I guess my position with Yarvin is is a little boring in that I don't hang on his every word. I've hardly read most of his stuff lately. I've read very little of Gray Mirror. The majority of the reading that I've done of him was from Unqualified Reservations. I've seen a little bit of Gray Mirror here and there, and then when people get all into a tizzy about something he writes, then I go and I read that thing. So it's funny that this is deserved, I suppose, that we've been known as kind of like the Yarvin guys, because that's sort of how we started. But it was just like when we started the show, it happened to be that Yarvin was the thing that we were into at the time, and then it felt like we kind of had squeezed all the juice there was out of Yarvin, and so we were on to the next things that we were interested in. But
I wish, buddy.
but we're apparently there seems to be a persistent notion that we're somehow followers or something like that. I think that ultimately we're some kind of patchwork, or were we to magically wind up in Ancapistan, I suspect that the patch that I would want to live in and the patch that Yarvin would want to live in would probably be different. I don't think that I would necessarily want to share a culture with him. I don't think that we are necessarily culturally inclined in the same direction. But I think that his power analysis, if nothing else, is absolutely spot on. And I think in this case here, it's very easy and fashionable for people to jump on something and be it's very fashionable to say, oh, that guy's a Fed. That guy's a Fed, and there's a very easy mid-wit IQ, mid-wit 115 IQ argument to say that he is here as some sort of a patsy to pacify the right, and that ultimately, because of his heritage and his family, then it's very obvious clearly that it's like people who are trying not to take something at face value. It's like, well, at face value, he's a dissident guy, but if you study a little bit, you realize he's got all these suspicious connections. So actually he's a Fed. So it's like, okay, well, you went one level deep. So now you think that you're like somehow like a deep thinker, or somehow you're challenging the consensus. There's kind of this ever, like nobody is ever dissident enough. Nobody is ever radical enough. Nobody is ever edgy enough. You have to have somehow, the edgy guy eventually becomes mainstream. So then you have to be like a new edgy guy.
You know who's like that? And I love it. It's great. Legal Man is exactly like that. Dude, everyone is an operative. It's the best thing ever. Or just like basically serving as an operative without, being officially an operative or whatever. But like even like with like Catherine Austin Fitz, I asked him what about Catherine Austin Fitz, and he's just like, oh yeah, she's great. She does great stuff. Yeah, but they only take it so far. It's just like, oh yeah, who runs everything? Mr. Global. Okay, you're not gonna say who's. Okay, yeah. I see where we're going. It's just, it's like, dude. It's like, what do you want from these people? It's just like, unless you throw yourself on the fucking pike to have your life ruined by like naming names and giving social security numbers of like who's behind everything. I was fucking dying when he was saying this shit. It's so good.
That's funny. Yeah, he said
the same thing about. He said something very similar about. There was a comment about Bannon, but he did say something about Bannon that was pretty good as well.
Oh, yeah, Bannon's one that I would buy is some kind of a controlled op. But here's the thing is that I think people get really sloppy with these sort of designations as well, because being controlled op does not, I think we might have gone into this before, but being controlled op does not mean that someone is cutting you a check. It doesn't mean that you're like meeting in the park. Yeah.
Check this box to agree to our terms of being a controlled op.
Right. Yeah. You're going to go sit on the park bench next to some guy in a trench coat and like have some shadowy meeting. And like, that's what it means to be a controlled op. Controlled op, it can be like a spiritual category. Like you're someone who occupies this position that you're not even getting paid. You're not even explicitly on the payroll. You don't have to be, because the role that you serve accomplishes that. And I think that there's a vein in which you could, if you isolated some of Yarvin's writings from everything else, I think that you could, I think that you could frame him in that way. But that requires, again, number one, like you can't expect someone to post like every single thing that they believe all in every single thing that they write. You have to take the whole thing as a what do you call it? A total whole. You have to like look at the entire picture. And so specifically in this case, so the meme I was referring to was so someone says, Yarvin, my family is being rounded up into quarantine camps. Do I fight back? The response is, no, you are not yet clear-pilled. Fighting back was invented by the Huguenot monarchomox back in the 16th century. When you kill your enemies, they win. So it's a funny meme. It's good. It's good for the lulz. But that was kind of it like a good meme does. It sort of encapsulates the spirit or the sentiment of the people who are taking issue with what he said. And it's a straw man, like most memes are, but it's a straw man that indicates where I think people are getting him wrong. I think people are misunderstanding what he's saying in this most recent post that he did. So, and I think that the point that he's making is really important. I think it's really important that people understand what he is, what he's getting at here. My notifications are just exploding in my ear, so I need to turn some of this stuff off.
Here's a comment from Jeremiah. It's pretty good.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. You ought to watch this on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, so the piece that he wrote, this was on December 8th, so it's been like 10 days since he wrote it. And the title on it was Some of You Are Not Yet Clear-Pilled. And the subtitle is Never Apply Power, Only Build Power. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with the term clear-pilled, I would encourage you to go read a series that Yarvin did. And it was the first one was 9/27 of 2019. Happy birthday, my little sister. For the American Mind, a publication of the Claremont Institute. The series was called The Clear Pill, Part 1 of 5, The 4-Stroke Regime. That's what Part 1 is called. I'd encourage you to go read the whole thing. In fact, don't go to the AmericanMind.org and read it. Go to Skeptical Waves on YouTube and listen to it. Shout out Skeptical Waves.
And another shout out, if you want another option, the Unists, Unism, one of the two. If you look up the Unists or Unism on YouTube, I think that's where I first found the stuff on the Clear Pill. And he does a really cool job editing the videos too. They have that kind of like barely vintage retro kind of like lo-fi kind of aesthetic, if you're into that kind of dumb shit like I know that all these children that listen to us are. But yeah, the Unist or Unism on the Clear Pill. I think he's got all the parts up there. It's pretty good.
Yeah, they got a pretty cool aesthetic. Okay, so I just wanted to read just a couple points from this. It's not necessarily to define the Clear Pill, but there was a couple of points. I went and was listening to Part 1 today, just kind of to refresh my mind on it. And there was a couple of points here that I wanted to draw out just as kind of framing for the conversation. So I'm reading. I put the link in the comment, or the what do you call it, the description of the YouTube video here. So you can go click it and you can read the whole thing yourself if you'd like. Just starting from the top, he says, the turn of the century Italian school of political science, whose leading figures were Gaetano Mosca and Vilfredo Pareto, and which James Burnham summarized in his best book, The Machiavellians, Defenders of Freedom, from 1940. So right off the bat here, Stephen's going to be taking issue with this because anybody who truly knows history knows that Mosca and Pareto both ripped off Burnham. That Burnham was actually the original thinker here, and they were the
Burnham ripoffs. Those guys, those
right.
fucking pops. Trader Joe's has some of the most amazing sangria. Yes, it comes in a box, but something from Trader Joe's in a box is better than many things not from Trader Joe's that aren't in a box.
I can say this with 100% honesty. I have never drank any alcoholic beverage from a box.
Well, this would be the one to start with, buddy.
I'll leave it to you. So the turn of the century Italian school of political science, whose leading figures were Gaetano Mosca and Vilfredo Pareto, and which James Burnham summarized in his best book, The Machiavellians, Defenders of Freedom, taught that all states are ruled by elites who subdue their subjects with illusions. That's the Machiavellians in a sentence. Mosca called these illusions political formulas. A political formula is any narrative element which makes its host prefer actions that objectively stabilize the regime. The peasant in ancient Egypt must submit to his pharaoh to avoid offending the latter's father, the sun. Political formulas are cousins of stage magic. Stage magic works by presenting true facts in a pattern that suggests a false story and obscures a true story. To act politically is to act on a stage beyond our lives and senses. No one can perceive unmediated reality. We act within a story. We read that story as reality, present history. So here you go. This is not materialism in the slightest, to use the buzzword. This is he's describing something that's like distinctly mystical here. Public opinion, this is like the best sentence in the whole piece. Public opinion is an effect, not a cause. Told the same story, most people will have the same opinion. Story drives opinion. Opinion drives action. There, I saved you a whole Walter Lippmann book. And as Voltaire said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. The Machiavellian hypothesis suggests that all modern regimes are Orwellian thought control regimes. Is this true? Is our own government like the deep state, subjecting its subjects by trapping their minds in a fake reality dome like in the Truman Show? Whoa, man. Most people don't think so. Most of the people who do think so are, I feel, ignorant, immature, deranged, or just plain wrong. Perhaps that's the way you feel as well. All serious people know there are no real conspiracies. Nobody's perfect, but in just about everything, the experts are just the experts, which is just the story you'd expect in any really first-class reality dome. No one is above stage magic, not even magicians themselves. Magic works by working harder than anyone's instincts. It's easy to teach the audience to instinctively reject certain kinds of ideas, and the experts and the serious people are the only people who have to be fooled. Political stage magic is the psychological engineering of the population. So, one thing here this reading through this, it took me a couple of times through it before. This is again where he is, as part of this, he's like going into character, or he's, maybe you could say, speaking tongue in cheek, or he's there's almost like a kind of a Straussian thing where he doesn't speak explicitly. He kind of makes allusions to things. He does this throughout Unqualified Reservations, where he just like, he'll link to something. He'll allude to it with a link, with a hyperlink, and you can go see the thing he's actually alluding to. But so he says, the Machiavellian hypothesis suggests that all modern regimes are Orwellian thought control regimes. Is this true? Then he says, most of the people who do think so are, I feel, ignorant, immature, deranged, or just plain wrong. Perhaps that's the way you feel as well. All serious people know there are no real conspiracies. Nobody's perfect, but in just about everything, the experts are just the experts. He's not saying that there are no real conspiracies. He's using the position of the people who are believing what they're supposed to believe, given the nature of the thought control, the thought control apparatus within the regime. What he's driving at here is that there's this consensus reality that we all talk about as if we all just share this consensus reality. And most people think that when they're talking to someone else, that person shares the reality that they have, that we all are all perceiving the exact same reality and talking about it in the same way. But if you study the development of political ideologies, if you study the history of the rise of regimes, this is where Jay Dyer has been like essential for me, and Catherine Austin Fitts as well. She gets into some of this stuff. What you see as reality is most likely something that's been implanted in you. There are influences that want you to see that as reality. They've presented that to you as reality. This is the old winners are the ones who write the history books adage. History is not like a set of brute facts that we can just ascertain via the scientific method and present as this is what actually happened. If you've listened to Lord of Spirits, you'll hear Father Stephen Young rail on this about the 19th century Germans who treat history as something where you just go back into history, you look at the events, you catalog all the specific details, and you put them together into a story of what actually happened. And then people that have this perspective, they run into this problem when they go back and they try to read ancient mythological books like the Bible or these other ancient texts, because ancient people did not view the world that way. They didn't view the world as a whole list of empirical facts that they needed to relay as a matter of passing on what actually happened. What they're passing on is the experience of the people who told the story to them, or their own experience. Because ultimately, there's a subjective nature to reality that you can't rationalize your way out of. I was just finished listening to a really interesting conversation. There was a debate between Trent Horn, who's a Catholic apologist, and Matt Dillahunty, who is a self-styled atheist philosopher. And so I didn't listen to the debate itself. I listened to Jay Dyer commenting on the debate based on the recommendation of one of the guys in the supporting listeners group. Shout out to Jonathan. And it's funny. It's like 3.5 hours long. And Dyer's just going along and like dissecting what they're saying on both sides as they go. And Dillahunty is actually a really good representation of the subject of the debate was, is it reasonable to believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ? And Dillahunty is a really good representation of the atheist perspective. That's ultimately this really naive empiricist position that is seemingly completely unaware of this nature of how quote unquote facts are not a matter of just empirical observation, and the history isn't this thing that we just could go back and make a list of facts and then just present them as this is what actually happened. Ultimately, any story of history is a matter of hearsay. So there was a great tweet from Amused Chimp where Dillahunty hit 9th grade and stayed there. There's a great tweet from Amused Chimp where he said, if the news is fake, imagine history. What you're seeing today with the whole fake news thing that's going on, this isn't new. This isn't just like some new phenomenon that just showed up. That once upon a time everything was just obvious that there was even-handed reporting, and there was both sides were given their day in court, and everyone was just reasonable and factual, and somehow everything got deranged just recently. No, it's always been deranged like this. There's always been the study of power throughout history. Power has always worked to twist the facts and to twist reality to its own ends. So whoever's in power is engaged in that process. Let me see. There was another section in here that I wanted to read. I forgot what the title was. I should have written it down. Okay. So he talks about the 2-story state and the 1-story state, and he compares them to a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke engine. Let's see. Where should I start here? Let's just start right here. So the 2-stroke regime is a 1-story state. Everyone has to believe one narrative, one official history of the present. This worked as well for Amenhotep as Chairman G. The 2-stroke is an especially good fit for centralized monarchical regimes. It also fits the canonical cliche of Orwellian totalitarianism. The 1-story state is efficient but unstable. Its chronic problem is that people hate being told what to believe. They often cause trouble even when the story is true. Anyone who's been to China has seen how efficiently classic totalitarianism can execute, in both senses. Not only does the PRC make all consumer goods, it's also the top destination for transplant tourism. Maybe you don't really want that Chinese 2-stroke SUV, even if it does pop like a dirt bike. Without oil in its gas, a 2-stroke engine overheats. In the end, it catches fire. Without active practice and hard repression, without serious enemies at home or abroad, the classic one-party state weakens. It rots from excessive success. In the end, it is overthrown by little girls with flowers. The ideal state might be a 1-story state where the story was 100% true, but this is a dangerous level of idealism, nor would it repeal these axioms of regime stabilization. So having a 1-story state where the story is 100% true, a large degree or a large reason why this is a dangerous level of idealism is because, again, you run into this subjective problem where everyone's experience of the world is a subjective experience, and so then ultimately there has to be a class whose responsibility is determining what constitutes truth. So that class ultimately, in order to retain their grip on determining what constitutes truth, they end up having to engage in this sort of repression.
It's like the meme of the guy who steps on the rake and it smashes him in the face versus the guy who like kick flips it down like a fucking 8 stair and then lands
Right.
in it and smashes him in the face.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he still gets hit in the face by the rake. So the 4-stroke regime is a 2-story state. When people hear one story, they tend to ask, is this true? When they hear 2 stories, they tend to ask, which one of these is true? Isn't this a neat trick? Maybe our whole world is built on it. Any point on which both poles concur is a shared story. Quote, uncontroversial bipartisan consensus. This is why we don't do dialectics, because you see here why a dialectic gives the impression of that it's one or the other. And it's a fantastic tool for constraining a conversation. It's a fantastic tool for corralling people into allowing someone else to determine their truth for them by framing it as a dialectic. Shared story has root privilege. It has no natural enemies, and is automatically true. Injecting ideas into it is non-trivial and hence lucrative. This profession is called PR. There is no reason to assume that either pole of the spectrum of conflict, or the middle, or the shared story, is any closer to reality than the single pole of the 1-story state. Dividing the narrative has not answered the old question. Is any of this true? Rather, it has dodged it. Stagecraft. This is even better than supposing that since we fought Hitler and Hitler was bad, we must be good. These very basic fallacies or psychological exploits are deeply embedded in our political operating systems. Like bugs in code, they are invisible until you look straight at them. Then they're obvious. There's a lot of people who talk about going down like the I guess I have to use the buzzword. Going down the anorexia rabbit hole. This is what a lot of people once they start seeing these things, they're like, wow, this stuff is really, really obvious. I don't know how I didn't see it before. But now that I'm seeing it, I can't stop seeing it. Now it seems completely obvious. The key feature of the 2-story state is much less reliance on hard repression. As in the 4-stroke engine, the cost of the feature is a pile of parts and a drop in performance. The fundamental engineering problem of the 2-story state is to contain the active but innocuous political conflict which distracts its subjects out of any real democratic power. The modern 2-story democracy contains 2 power cores, a civic core and a political core. The trick is, in theory, the political core is stronger than the civic core. In practice, the civic core is stronger than the political core. A stable regime must maintain this power inversion. If stability is lost, the political core takes control. For an instant, the engine becomes a real democracy. Then it turns into something else or just catches fire and explodes. Think Germany in 1933.
Think United States in 2016.
Yeah. Yet the inversion is, at bottom, a lie. The political core is presented as the ruler. The civic core is presented as the tool. So, like, the national security state serves the president. That's the narrative. That's the way it's presented to everybody. In reality, the president serves the national security state. The political core is presented as the ruler. The civic core is presented as the tool. The real flow of power is the opposite of the apparent flow. Public opinion does not direct the civic core. The civic core guides public opinion. The NGOs, the State Department, all of all of these apparatuses, these so-called private apparatuses that flow from academia, they inform the media apparatuses, whether it's Hollywood or the press, or even like sporting, like the positions that are espoused by celebrities, sports by athletes. You've got the Jonas Brothers and Pentatonix are now working with the White House to try to encourage people to go get their boosters. That's all supposed to be presented as like these people are just espousing these self-evident truths that everybody just kind of naturally arrived at. When in reality, This is the civic core directing the political apparatus. The one-story state needs continuous repression. The two-story state needs continuous stagecraft. Of course, the former can still lie and the latter can still repress. In current language, the positive label democracy signifies the civic core. We must all defend democracy from politics, a negative label. People really believe this newspeak. Since it is dangerous to reverse the power flow, they may even be right. So I think that's probably about as much as I wanted to get from this piece. That kind of lays the groundwork sort of for the framing of the next piece. So the next one is one that one was written in September of 2019. This one here was written 10 days ago, December 8, 2021. So let's see. Let's start this with it will just start from the top. He says, I always get a lot of flack when I COVID post. This time is no exception. In general, your attitude toward this COVID shit show predicts a certain kind of political sophistication and detachment, which you can call whatever you like. If you have it, you're going to make it. If not, well, it is my job, isn't it, to help you try to make it? Some smart readers ask, sure, in the abstract, a sovereign regime has the abstract sovereign right to emergency biopower, up to and including welding its subjects in their condos to cope with some kind of airborne smallpox leprosy. But this regime, these measures, and this virus? The answer is that right is always abstract. Sovereignty's rights are always unlimited. This by no means makes all of its uses of power right and proper, especially in the case of our own dear regime, which is really a beaut. TC asked, what was the first piece called? The first piece was called the Clearpilled Part 1 of 5, the 4-stroke regime. The link to it is in the description of this video. And I was reading from the first part. When power is doing the wrong thing. This is back to the piece from 10 days ago. We cannot say the regime is acting rightfully because rightful emergency measures require a genuine emergency, and the measures must be genuinely effective. There is not a clear case for the efficacy of Western non-pharmaceutical interventions, and those currently driving them seem curiously uninterested in basic measures, such as better masks and more cheaper rapid tests, that would make them work much better, but do not invoke the tense avenging joy of collective coercion. And while COVID is sort of an emergency is an emergency if handling it as an emergency works much better than business as usual, which isn't completely clear here either. So where I depart from him here is perception of COVID. And how can I say this here carefully? He takes it more seriously than I do, and I understand why he takes it more seriously than I do. The difference here for me is that it does not rise to the level where I would buy that some sort of drastic measures would be in order. But this is what really drove me down this path to begin with. What if it had been? For the first couple of weeks of the first probably I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 weeks, something like that. Starting in January when nobody was talking about it, I was following a bunch of people who were looking at this. And by all evidence at that point, this was a big deal. There was no reason to think that it wasn't. By all evidence, it looked like it was really, really bad. And it was very infectious, that it was brutal, that it would put people out. It was hitting people at all different ages. By all appearances, it looked like something that could be really, really bad. After a while, after enough time built up, it became evident that it has its range in which it's really, really bad, and then it has its range in which it's not. And that ultimately it didn't amount to a level that would demand some sort of drastic action. Clearly, he still takes it seriously to a level, to a degree. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the culture that he swims in. He's surrounded by people who take it seriously, and so he does. I don't a lot of people have brought up his writing about I don't want to use all these buzzwords. His writing about we'll say the weather to kind of allude to it. The political narratives about the weather, and how he very clearly saw the the incentive structure there and the corruption within that narrative. And so then they're kind of like, somehow he's sucked into this and he's a sucker for this, and he saw it back then, but somehow he's blind to it now and he can't see it now. I don't think that he can't see it now. I think that he's had personal experience with how bad it can be. And so he doesn't want to have those personal experiences, and he doesn't want other people to have those personal experiences.
I think he also references in that piece him saying that he was overly sensitive to it. And he even makes fun of himself. He's like, partially because he was betting on it.
Right.
I think he actually, I don't know how serious to take him. Hi.
And I think that
my life, but yeah, but like I think he may have put like money on it, that it was going to be particularly bad or something like that. I think he made a Vegas bet. So I think he's referencing that, but yeah, he kind of references that he was more that he sort of overreacted to it or whatever. And he also has like personal experience and stuff like that. So
right. So he I think it's really easy for people now to be like, oh, it was obvious from the beginning that it was nothing, and no, it definitely wasn't. I think people forget that the collective, like the actual corporate press narrative on it for a long time was that it was nothing. So now it's like people were inundated with that. Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. And they were like withstanding that. They're like withstanding that pressure. They're like, no, it's something. It's something. It's something. It's something. It's something. And then finally it turns out to be nothing. And so then like subconsciously, psychologically, they're like, oh yeah, well, we always knew it was nothing. But no, there was a period of time where it very clearly seemed like it was something, where the only data that was available made it definitely look like it was something.
I'm going to go through my old phones and post in the supporting listeners group some screenshots of various conversations that Uncle Stevie Boy called this dead nuts from the beginning.
And this is where as I was watching all of this unfold in real time, I was starting to question all my libertarian dogmas. And I was like, say this is, say it is like super Ebola or something, like say there was actually a major issue here where it's majorly infectious. It was what they made it out to be. Then by all means, like the whole, like, oh, my rights thing I would be like, fuck your rights. This is more important. Just like, I don't know any way around that. So the issue here now, I don't want to get lost in this, that I think that the people who are leading all of this, the people who are directing all of this, are somehow just well-meaning, or that there isn't some kind of concerted effort. Like clearly there's a concerted effort, and there's there's all sorts of fraud going on with this. Clearly this isn't well-meaning people being taken advantage of. I mean, there are well-meaning people being taken advantage of, but so I'm speaking like in the abstract, theoretically speaking. If there was in early 2020 some type of an actually really severe virus that was going around, that was taking people out, that was massively infectious, that had this long incubation period and all of that, then yeah, I would want anybody who had the power to do so to lock things down and to quarantine people, because I wouldn't want an infectious thing to go crazy like that. The problem is that our sense-making apparatuses are all completely destroyed, and people don't trust them. So there was no way of like trying to get the word out, so that you can't disentangle all of these issues from each other. They're all tangled up with each other. Steven just disappeared. So if I'm thinking about like an ideal governor, not like governor of a state, but like someone responsible for governing, then they're going to have to deal with a situation where it comes up that they have power invested in them to make the right decisions, and they're faced with a potentially egregious virus like this, or whatever other infectious agent, and they have to respond to that. They have to lead people, direct people on how they're supposed to respond to it. This is the nature of human psychology. And if you're just going to say, oh, well, let everybody all just kind of respond to it how they want and just let the chips fall where they may, that's just a fundamentally psychotic position. It doesn't, it sounds great in theory, but you're never going to get a sufficient number of people to just go along with that. And if you have that position and you advocate for that position, and then there is an actually severe thing going around and tons of people die because people didn't take it seriously enough, it's reality that you're going to be made responsible for that. It doesn't mean that you are responsible for it, but you're going to be made responsible for it. And that's going to put you in a bad position. That's going to put your values and your ideology and your whatever you're advocating for in a bad position. It's going to put your people in a bad position. The consequence of that is that you are going to lose status and standing within the society, which means you're going to lose your own ability to influence. These are just realities of the situation that have to be considered, and that the naive libertarian, natural rights philosophy has no answer for, has no way of grappling with. So back to Yarvin here. So, okay, he says, well, COVID is sort of an emergency. An emergency is an emergency. I thought this is an interesting point. An emergency is an emergency if handling as an emergency works much better than business as usual, which isn't completely clear here either. So that's okay. Honestly, it's not a great regime. It does weird stuff for weird reasons, right? But we knew that, didn't we? When power is doing the wrong thing for some dumb reason, I hope it's not too hokey to quote Bruce Lee, be water. The wrongfulness of power's thing makes it rightful to resist. But is it prudent to resist? Is it necessary to resist? Almost always no. Your action must not be reactive. Water does not push back. Water lets the enemy expend energy, expending no energy against him. Water does not forget that the enemy is an enemy, nor ever lose sight of its lovely dream of filling his throat. When you are not following Bruce Lee's wisdom, you always think you are fighting back. Usually what you are doing is participating, giving your energy to the enemy. When you're reacting, you're controlled by whomever you're reacting to. If you're in a reactive position, you're trapped in a dialectic. So power that is sovereign by definition, you can say they shouldn't be sovereign. They are sovereign. So when they're doing the wrong thing for a dumb reason, if you resist them, if you fight them on it, and you don't have the power to win that fight, which if you did, then ultimately you would be the sovereign. If you don't have the power to win that fight, then fighting them is energizing them, and you're compromising your own energy. Continue. Power and opposition. The only practical reasons to study political science are to study A, how to apply power against the current regime, and B, how the next regime should apply its power. The answer to A is very simple. Never apply power. Only build power. In the end, it is quite likely that you will not even need to fight. You will win almost automatically. And once you have enough power to fight, you'll definitely know it. This is the nature of power. If you just focus on building power, you don't need to fight. Because ultimately, when you've built sufficient power that you would win the fight, most likely you won't need to. And if you do, you'll know it. Anybody who's trying to fight right now, who's trying to fight all this, who's approaching it with that posture, I can tell you right now, they don't have the power to win that fight. This is not an absolute rule. There are no absolute rules in the art of war, which, like it or not, includes the art of politics. It is not impossible for collective action from a dissident position to be effective. So I'll say that again. It's not impossible for collective action from a dissident position to be effective. But any collective action is a military action and must be judged on a military basis. Collective political action is a military action and must be judged on a military basis. The standards for the prudence of a military action have never changed. A prudent action must be expected to increase your strength relative to the enemy's strength. The war is won when the enemy has no strength, no power to resist. We can imagine collective action aimed at a goal, offensive or defensive, that meets this very high standard. Suppose the goal is stopping a new regime measure that will open the borders and give ruling party memberships and voting rights to everyone who comes in, thus stuffing the ballot box with human beings. The defensive power value of this goal is very high, since failing to achieve it will politically disempower the native population for all time eternal. Most actions are not like this. If the goal of the defensive action is preventing some abuse of power, assuming there is actually a collective action against this abuse that would be effective, we still need to ask whether the abuse of power is making the regime more powerful. Again, we need to ask whether the abuse of power is making the regime more powerful. So now I'll go back to this earlier piece where he's talking about the two-story regime and the two-stroke regime and the four-stroke regime. The four-stroke regime being the two-story regime. So the two-story regime, let me go back to find the exact quote, was a two-story state. So the two-story state says, with one story, people tend to ask, is this true? When they hear two stories, they tend to ask, which one of these is true? So the two-story state exists by getting you to get trapped in this dialectic. Is this true or is this true? And then you fight back and forth between these two. It doesn't matter which one is true. It's just one of the, and you sit here and you fight back and forth. So then the power system has an incentive for everybody to pick one side or the other of a given topic. It doesn't matter what the topic is. This is where ideology becomes a trap. It doesn't matter what the actual subject is. The responsibility of the agent of the regime is to endorse one side of it so that people will endorse the opposite side, and then they'll fight over it. This can change and move and elaborate over time for like indefinitely. If you try to adopt an ideological position in the midst of all of this, and you try to jump in with that ideological position in that fight, you're just going to get caught in that dialectic. You're just going to get trapped in it. Because the whole point is to give the impression that there's two opposite sides and there's two people fighting against each other, and one side might win out over the other. So in this case, when the regime is doing something stupid, where it's very obviously stupid and incompetent, what he's saying is that fighting it, going out and presenting yourself as opposition to it, just lends credibility to the regime. Because now it gives itself something to fight against. Now, instead of fighting the actual issue, it can fight against you. And it's much easier for it to seem credible against you than it is to seem credible against the actual issue. So he's conceding that the regime's approach to the issue is incompetent and stupid. He thinks it's incompetent and stupid more on the side of that it needs to take it more seriously and combat it more effectively. If I had to choose between having the regime take it seriously and combat it more effectively and have the regime ignore it altogether, or not, rather, I get the option of the regime ignoring it altogether. That's not going to happen. If I have to choose between it handling it the way it is right now and handling it the way he wants it to be handled, I'd rather him handle it the way he wants it to be handled. I think that's more likely than the regime not addressing it at all or not relating to it at all. Looks like Steven's gone. He said he had to peace out at 5, so makes sense that he took off. Okay, so back to reading here. So he says, if the goal of the defensive action is preventing some abuse of power, assuming there's actually a collective action against this abuse that would be effective, because just combating the abuse doesn't necessarily mean you're actually preventing it. Just fighting can just as easily be activity masquerading as achievement. So saying we need to fight, Okay, well, is the fighting that you're doing actually effective? Do you have a clear path to victory? Do you have any sort of plan at all? Or is it just fight? Just expend energy? So if we're going to assume there's actually a collective action, there's actually some sort of dissident collective action we can engage in to fight the regime, then we still need to ask whether the abuse of power is making the regime more powerful. And what's happening is that this abuse of power is destroying the credibility of the regime. As the regime loses credibility, it loses power. So as long as you fight it, you help the regime retain credibility and retain power. It's the old Napoleon, don't interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Back to the text. If not, by opposing the abuse, we are only dissipating our power. Using energy against power, even successfully, does not create more energy. It just uses up energy. This is why it says, never apply power, just build it. The main effect of Brexit was to dissipate the political energy that created Brexit. No power was created either by the symbolic victory or the tangible results. The worst kind of goals to use power on, this is bad grammar here. The worst kind of goals to use power on are entirely symbolic goals. Then victory is nothing but dissipation, the emptiness of a masturbatory orgasm. When the goal is substantive and good, better, but this does not validate the goal as a target. Only if the goal can be plausibly achieved, and if achieving it improves the balance of power, do we have a prudent political target. Most abuses of power make bad targets for the simple reason that most abuses of power tend to discredit the regime. Therefore, ending them, even if it can be done, is actually naive and un-Machiavellian, a luxury no rebel can afford. As Napoleon said, never interrupt the enemy when he's in the process of destroying himself. So, where a lot of this falls short for people, I think, is that number one, they don't know how to assess their own ability to use power. They don't know how to assess. They get wrapped up in narratives. They get wrapped up in the kind of whipped up in the fervor about the grand political action that they're going to take and how great it's going to look when we, get on all these platforms and preach our message or whatever the thing is. And they have too rosy of a perspective. They got rose-colored glasses evaluating their own potential political efficacy. I think that's one major issue for people. The other one is just that people evaluate these things in isolation. So they look at expanding regime power. They look at the regime doing worse and worse things, and they see this as the regime getting more and more powerful. What's happening is that the regime is getting closer and closer to collapsing, and so it's acting out more and more. But by virtually everyone's assessment of it, this isn't sustainable. It can't continue forever. It's going to collapse eventually. No regime ever lasts forever. The regime is going to collapse eventually. But it's not going to collapse because people fought it enough. This is the myth of 1776 that induces people to keep injecting energy into the system. Regimes don't collapse because people fight them so hard that they eventually keel over. Regimes collapse because they lose credibility and they lose power because people turn to something more powerful or something more credible. And that's going to happen eventually. So that may mean that you have to suck it up and you have to take some pain. But you're going to have to take pain either way. So you can take pain productively or you can take pain unproductively by making yourself a sacrifice. So rather than flinging yourself against the ramparts and trying to go out in a blaze of glory and have people write nice stories about you, go rot in prison for no reason whatsoever, so that you can, tout your own political cred. And I'm trying not to get too personal directly, but there's certain people right now that are complaining about the fact that they're being abused by power. They're stuck in jail because they did something stupid that's going to get them stuck in jail. If you don't want to get stuck in jail, don't do the stupid thing that's going to get you stuck in jail. Yeah, sure, you should be able to do the stupid thing and not get put in jail, but you're going to get put in jail. You're more effective out of jail than in. I guess it's not necessarily true for everyone. Anyways, so the proper message to the people on how to handle an abuse of power is as follows. This abuse of power is characteristic of this regime, which will never change. If you don't like this kind of abuse, you need to figure out how to help change the regime, which will not happen soon in any case, so do figure out how to endure the abuse. Moreover, these kinds of goals are terribly distracting when you are sitting back in our armchairs and solving problem B, what the ideal regime of the future should do about a problem like COVID. You might not think solving this problem would help get us to the ideal regime of the future, but you would be wrong about that too. Nothing can happen until it becomes plausible, and making it plausible is the job of the intellectual. Plus, it sucks to be in power and have no plan how to use it. History has seen more of this than one might think. It's safest to assume that when you are out of power, your goal is to build power, not use power. True, there are real opportunities for dissident collective action, but your monkey mind wants to see these opportunities so badly that not 100th of them are real, as judged by basic inescapable military logic. That's basically the end of the piece. The way this has been taken, like the meme that I said earlier, was basically that, my family's being rounded up in quarantine camps. Do I fight back? If you're at the point where your family's being rounded up in quarantine camps, fighting back's not going to do anything. Are you going to be like this dad that just like killed himself and his family? Okay, well, I don't know. Did he win? Did he lose? He's not going to go to a quarantine camp. Did he fight back? I don't know. I don't want to be in that position. The point here isn't that you should just bend over and take it up the poop chute. The point is that expending a bunch of energy on symbolic victories because you don't understand how the regime works, getting all wrapped around the axle and whipped up into a fervor about this is the most tyrannical thing ever, and they're going to do all these tyrannical things. And look, I predicted the last tyrannical thing, and I'll keep predicting the next tyrannical thing without doing anything about insulating myself from that. That's where you're actually feeding the system. The system depends upon having active collective dissidents. It's part of the founding myth of the regime. And everybody thinks that their collective dissidence is going to be the one that wins. But by definition, the vast majority of them are not. So don't confuse activity for achievement. Just fighting back, quote unquote, fighting back is meaningless and is actually ultimately counterproductive. When you volunteer yourself as the dissidents that justify the escalations of the policies, like that they're going to escalate the policy for one reason or another. They are. They've laid out their entire game plan. Obviously, each of these things is going to happen. So fighting it isn't going to stop it from happening. You're not going to stop it from happening for most people. Most people are going to get sucked into the Borg. Fact. It's just going to happen. You can use just about any sort of predictive method to establish that that's what's going to happen. So the question is, are you going to get sucked into that? Or are you going to put yourself somewhere where you don't get sucked into it? You don't have to fight to make yourself immune to the regime. Fighting is not the only way of winning, especially when the game is designed to induce you to fight, to make you think that you're going to win, just to create the pretext for the next escalation in power for the regime. Let the regime escalate itself into collapse. It's going to happen eventually. Maybe it doesn't happen for 100 years, but you fighting it now isn't going to make it happen sooner. If anything, you just make the regime more powerful, because in the eyes of people who otherwise might have seen the regime as the greatest threat, now they see you as the threat. And so to a degree, they actually like, well, actually, the regime kind of has a justification for all these escalations because look at these people being assholes. And like, the regime isn't actually doing this stuff just unprovoked. It's doing it because these people are being assholes. And if those people stop being assholes, the regime would stop doing what it's doing. So if the people stop fighting back, the regime keeps doing what it's doing, then you've created an opportunity for those people to recognize and to, it's not that then you get those people to all rally behind creating the solution that overthrows the regime. Is that you get those people to withdraw their energy from it as well as they recognize the futility and the corruption of it. And in the meantime, you're building some sort of alternative. You're building whatever lifeboat people can port themselves over to and withdraw themselves from the Titanic as it sinks. So this is part of what the clear pill is. You should go read the whole series on the clear pill. I strongly encourage it. Ultimately, one of the analogies that he uses, he says, imagine that you live in Haiti. Like you just moved to Haiti. Maybe he's Dominican. I don't remember where exactly. I think he uses Haiti. You're in some other country where you just moved there and you live there. You're not a citizen. You're just a resident there. For the vast majority of people, they're not going to really concern themselves about Haitian politics. They're not going to concern themselves about who's winning which election. You're just there, and your goal is just stay out of the way. That's the posture that you should adopt to the regime here. Just stay out of the way. Put yourself in a place where you're going to be affected by it the least. Yes, they're attempting to create a system that for which there is no escape. That's what they're attempting to do. But you don't have to defeat their system. You just have to create a system that can't be overtaken. You don't have to destroy them. You just have to put yourself out of their reach. And if enough people put themselves out of their reach, then eventually the regime will collapse. It's going to collapse either way. Whether it's in 5 years or 50 years or 500 years, it's going to collapse. Every regime ever has. And the idea that we're going to reach some sort of like this dystopia that's in all these movies that, this is effectively the end of the world. Well, don't bet on the end of the world. It's only going to happen once. And when it does, you'll have bigger problems. If you'd like, so one of our other sponsors here is some people may look at it and they say, well, this is a you're sponsored by the GOP Mises Caucus. Isn't that some sort of like collective dissident action? Again, it's not collective dissident action that's wrong. It's fighting back just for the sake of fighting back. If you're going to fight back, you got to do it smartly. Again, we don't do dialectics here. It's not fight back or don't fight back. It's don't fight back stupidly. Fight back in a way that keeps you off the radar of the regime, that isn't a direct attack on the regime, that isn't trying to defeat the regime, but is just making yourself immune from it. If you're going to go about it, you have to go about it. You have to look as innocent and unassuming. You have to speak their language. You have to present yourself as someone who's not clearly rallying people to go fight against the regime, as a certain author tends to do, and he gets accused of being a glowy for it. So the GOP Mises Caucus is one of the sponsors of the show because I think the vast majority of people have no business getting involved in any sort of collective dissident action. The vast majority of people need to focus, they need to put their head down, and they need to focus on taking control of their life, taking control of their income, taking control of their families, taking control of their communities. Forget the regime. Sidestep it. Do whatever you can to keep off its radar and just build. Keep your head down and build. That's for the vast majority of people. A very small subset of the population will find themselves in a position where they have built. They've controlled the source of their income. They've isolated themselves as much as they can from the regime. And now they're in a position where they can start doing something to create the thing that could potentially replace it. We're not going to be here. There's two possibilities. Either the end of the world is nigh and none of this shit matters, and you need to get your affairs in order, make yourself right with the Lord, and prepare for the great comet or whatever. Shout out Randall Carlson. There's that perspective. Or we're going to be here for who knows how long. Even like coming from the Christian perspective. Who knows when Jesus is returning? It could be 5 years, could be 50 years, could be 500, could be 5,000. Who knows? And I don't buy that Christians should have no role in determining what future governance arrangements might exist. I think Christians have a responsibility for taking leadership roles in their communities. If you're not a Christian, fine, I'm not talking to you. I think Christians have a responsibility for taking leadership roles in their communities. And part of that means attempting to innovate in the types of organizations that govern societies. There's a long tradition within both of the apostolic traditions, both of the oldest Christian traditions. There's a long history of the state and the church cooperating. I happen to favor what I know of the Orthodox idea of symphonia, the Orthodox imperium, which recognizes that state and church collaboration is inevitable. And rather than trying to separate them, you want that relationship to be explicit. You want the state to exist with the explicit blessing of the church. You want Christians in positions of leadership who are acting to take control of the outcomes of their communities and protect their people. Try to protect them from outsiders who would seek to subvert them and break them down. I think that our society is suffering from a lack of strong Christian leadership. And the area where you can make the most difference is at the local level. The state level, the national level is total theater, complete political theater. Never going to make any significant difference there. But you can make a difference at the local level, particularly with ingenious pieces of political technology like the anti-tax. If you don't know what the anti-tax is, we're going to be doing a show here in the next few weeks. You can go over to Popular Liberty, to Andrew's channel, and you can find out about it there. We're also going to have, I won't say for now, just we'll have a special guest. For those of you who are very much on Twitter, you might recognize the guest. And Andrew, we're going to do a 2-part series, one on here and one on Andrew's channel. We're going to talk about the anti-tax here, and we're going to talk about archotropism on Andrew's channel with this very interesting special guest. It'll probably happen at some point in January, but if you want to find out more about the anti-tax, just be on the lookout for that. We'll schedule that interview as soon as we can. But for in the meantime, the GOP Mises Caucus was started for the purpose of finding, number one, finding good candidates of good Christian character in red areas of red states, specifically red areas of red states. That's the area where efforts can be put to the greatest use. Red areas of red states, taking over local communities and beginning to fight back in a very non-controversial way against the COVID regime. Certain communities are just tired of it. They don't want anything to do with it. If they're not going to have anything to do with it, they need to have leadership who will represent them, who will represent their interests and protect them. And then the implementation of things like the anti-tax, which can ultimately serve the dual purpose of, number one, ensuring that the state retains its funding so it doesn't feel threatened. But it also ends or dials back as much as possible the practice of oppressive forms of taxation, and taxation being used as a weapon. So the state can get all the funding that it wants to do all the different projects, all the pork bill spending or whatever they want. in a privatized manner. It's one of the really interesting aspects of the anti-tax. Again, if you want to know more about it, you can find out when we do the interview here in the next several weeks, or you can go over to Andrew's channel on Popular Liberty, and you can watch some of the episodes that he's talked about it there. So if you want to, number one, if you want to support the Mises Caucus, then the GOP Mises Caucus, GOP Mises Caucus, you can support them. You can give a monthly donation. Go to misesgop.org/donate-king. That's donate-king. misesgop.org/donate-king. You can support them there. Any amount. There's no amount is too little. Support them with as much as you'd like, or as little as you'd like. The only thing that he asks is that if you're going to do that, then please, if you're going to do a large amount, then please split it up over an entire year, because it makes his planning easier. And then if you're someone who's in a red area of a red state and you are interested in running for office and taking a leadership role in your community, he's rounding up candidates right now, and he's going to support them in their local races. Local races in a lot of places, especially in a lot of the more like rural red states, it takes very, very little money to actually win positions of pretty significant influence. So one of the test candidates, one of the first candidates, is going to be good old fireman Buck Johnson, our good friend from Counterflow. So you can reach out to, you can follow the GOP Mises Caucus on Twitter, twitter.com/GOP Mises, or @GOP Mises on Twitter. And then you can reach out to them there and get in touch with Andrew and let him know that you'd be interested in running if you're someone who would qualify. And once again, if you want to donate, it's misesgop.org/donate-king. All right. Well, that is about all that I had in here today. I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off all day. So I think I'm going to go spend a little bit of time with my family. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming on here and listening to us ramble away, and for supporting the show, for supporting our sponsors. We appreciate all you guys. And again, like I said at the beginning, if you showed up partway through, you can go back and listen. I don't know, it was maybe 20 minutes in or so. I gave a little update on kind of where Amy and Eastwood and I are in our life right now, and some of the changes that are coming for us over the next couple of weeks. It's looking like most likely we're going to be moving to Texas and to the San Antonio area, and it's going to be a bit of a chaotic next several weeks as we get that straightened out. So we appreciate your prayers. If you'd like to join the supporting listeners group, you can support us and have a good time in the Discord server there. Subscribestar.com/kingpilled. And yeah, follow me on Twitter @RealKingPilled. Follow Steven on Twitter @Messina Inc. And we'll see you guys next time. Toodaloo.